Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and happy new year to everyone. Welcome to all of our attendees tuning in from around the world. Today's Zoomcast of Invisible Women in Sport is our first episode for 2021. This is an Institute for Sport and Social Justice production, and I'm your producer, Garnett Overby III. All guests will be muted during this production, but I encourage you to use the chat feature to ask questions or leave a comment. We will reserve time near the end to answer a few questions. So now, without further ado, I would like to welcome our 2021 host, Taylor Middleton.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of Invisible Women in Sports. I am your host, Taylor Middleton. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Sable Lee, the Assistant Athletic Director of Student Athlete Development at Clemson University. And next, she will be talking about her podcast that she has.
Awesome. Well, first and foremost, Taylor, thank you so much. And I'm so blessed to be here today. Been really excited. And I already see some familiar faces and names and people who I consider family, direct and indirect. So hello, everybody. Before we begin, just wanted to shout out a project that I have been so grateful to partner with for not only friends but beautiful queens. We just started a podcast called Start Her 5, and it's led by 5 Black women in sport. We all have different backgrounds, and we just aim to inspire and uncover layers of Black women in sport. For those of you who have listened, you know we keep it real, it's authentic, and we're just being ourselves. So we just encourage you all to follow us. My tribe mates are Kayla Henderson, Antonisha McCrae, Crystal Peterson, and Grace Flowers. So shout out to my sisters, and it's just a really fun project. Episode 3 just got released yesterday. It's called Different Shades of Brown, and we just hope that you all enjoy listening. So just wanted to start today off by shouting out my 4 sisters in our project. So thank you, Taylor.
Thank you so much. So like I kind of told you the other day, we're going to start off pretty quick. So to bring in something that Tolu used to do, we're going to do rapid fire for 30 seconds. So everybody, you see Tolu at the bottom. If you see her, say hi. Everybody, please get active in the chat. You're more than welcome to answer some of the questions I will be asking, but we'll have 30 seconds. So I'm getting ready to start in 3, 2, 1. Softball or basketball?
Softball.
Beyonce or Rihanna?
Beyonce all day.
Period. Favorite food?
Spaghetti.
Favorite hobby?
Listening to music.
What kind?
All. Everybody knows I like it all. Okay. R&B, old school R&B. I'll have to go with that.
Pet. Ice cream or candy?
Depends on where the ice cream, Cold Stone.
Netflix or Hulu?
Netflix. No commercial.
One thing you want to accomplish before the end of the year?
Ooh, create a couple workshops of my own.
That was the last one.
That was fun.
So just to get started, Sable is our first guest of our Y series, which is Women of Influence in Sport and Education. And it highlights women of color who are in the first 5 to 10 years of their career in sport. And about 1/3 of our guests this season will be representing this. Sable was previously a collegiate athlete at Jacksonville University, and then later a softball coach at Marshall University, and worked with the J.T. Margaret Tarkington Leadership Academy at Texas Tech. So, like I had mentioned, you had played softball in college, but as I know, softball, you don't see a lot of Black women in it. So what kind of drove you to playing that specific sport?
Yes, that's a great question. And Lauren, I see you in the chat. Go Dolphins all day. I see you. So my first love was basketball. So I have 2 older brothers, and I grew up in a very competitive household. So I really didn't have any choice to not partake in something, to be involved. So my first love was basketball, but I really fell in love with baseball. My neighbors, I wanted friends. I'm a personable person. So my neighbors played baseball. So I said, okay, well, I'll try it out. And I fell in love with it. So my dad took me out to the softball field, took me out to Oviedo Little League, and was out there, and I just fell in love with the game. Just the thrill of it, the strategy, the feel of throwing somebody out, and then the thrill of hitting a ball really hard. And I didn't think about anything other than wanting to play ball. I wanted to play softball. I played multiple sports growing up, but softball was the one that I stuck to. And I think from a standpoint of being Black and playing softball, I didn't really realize it until probably the middle school and high school, because again, I wasn't focused on what was going on around me. I just wanted to play softball with my friends and to have fun. But once I started to get into the travel ball stage and traveling and everything, once we started to travel into some pretty rural areas and staying in hotels and just exploring the world or the country, which is awesome, I really started to feel the divide and the difference between myself and my teammates and other teams. So that's how I got into the game. My first love was basketball, but I fell in love with softball at a young age.
So what were the other sports that you played?
So in high school, I played basketball my first 2 years. I played softball all 4 years. I was on the women's weightlifting team as well, which that was really fun, just learning a new sport. And I actually played golf as well. And there's a funny story. I played golf because in the fall, there was slow pitch softball. And I wasn't really a fan because everything that I'm good at in softball, you can't do in slow pitch. Bunt, steal, rob home runs wasn't a thing in slow pitch. So I didn't want to play. And the only excuse that our coach would allow to not play slow pitch is if we played another fall sport. So I looked around, looked over here, I said, well, guess I'm joining the golf team, gonna learn golf. So I played 4 sports in high school, stuck with softball. By my junior year, softball was the only sport just because of scholarship reasons and wanted to stay injury free, but love sport for sure.
Okay, so then how would you say your experience was on the softball team when you were at Jacksonville, and then just as an athlete in general?
Yeah, that was interesting. I think one, I gained sisters for life, right? No matter what race, background, I still talk to them to this day. I think it depended on the season, it depended on the leadership. When I first got to JU, as far back as records show and as we can remember, just talking to administration and former coaches, I was the first. However, we're not 100% sure. So if there's someone out there who is the first, I'm really passionate about finding that information out and just honoring that because I think it's really important. However, my first year, I was the only on the team. And that was okay. It was interesting because that was the election year between President Barack Obama and I believe it was Mitt Romney. So, that was interesting, just teammates having different political views, different political backgrounds. I can remember a time where we were conditioning and it was 5:30 in the morning, the day after a debate. My teammate was wanting to talk about stuff and I just had to look at her and just say, not this morning. Nope, because she was accusing all kinds of things. And so times like that, it felt isolating. When we would play at HBCU or different schools like that, just the microaggressions and ignorance would definitely come to the surface. And sometimes I had the ability to educate if teammates were open, and then sometimes I really had to choose between being silent because it's 5 minutes before the game, and if I blow up, it is not going to look pretty. Or having a conversation with a teammate that I think I could have a conversation with. So there were times where it's isolating. There were times where I had educational opportunities. But I think what was really important was, throughout my time, I did have other teammates who looked like me, the ability to build relationships with other student athletes who looked at me and be able to lean on them too was really good. But definitely there was some challenges with it. At the end of the day, just like when I was a little girl, I loved the game though. I love the game. I still love the game. My friends will tell you Sable is a softball junkie. She talks about it all the time. If the Women's College World Series is on, I got it on my TV. I got another game over here, and I'm probably following somebody on my phone too. So while it was challenging and there were times where had to deal with some situations, there are still very positive outcomes to that. And I was, that led me to be a better coach and to support black softball players that I was coaching, or that if I was at a camp and I saw a black softball player, just being able to relate to their shoes, it all made it worth it.
Yes, that's so nice to hear. So with all of that and all your experiences with that, did any of that impact your decision on what you wanted to study when you went to grad school and what you were going to do thereafter?
Um, a little bit. I think what impacted my decision with grad school is just I went through an injury my junior year, and that woke me up because, again, like how I'm a softball junkie now, I was a softball junkie my first 2 years. I wasn't thinking about anything else. But the year of my injury really made me step back and look at what is life after college, right? And then also going into grad school, I was actually choosing between taking my 5th year because of the injury and then eventually going into the DeVos program. And because of the pillars of the DeVos program, because of the leadership, because, Dr. Jeff O'Brien is there, Dr. Lapchick is there, and just the pillars of the program, I really, really valued that opportunity. So I would say, yes, my experience made me appreciate diversity, equity, inclusion, made me appreciate community outreach and giving back. But I really, my injury and just some life things that happened during my time made me sit back and look to what I value and what I want to do for the rest of my life. So
Yeah, I can really relate to that. And I was kind of explaining that to you. I also had an injury my
mm-hmm.
junior year. For those who don't remember, I was on the track team at the University of Pittsburgh. Also, just like you, when that happened, I was like, dang, what am I going to do? And then last year in March, COVID happened. So I was also deciding between like, do I take my 5th year or do I go to grad school? And I was kind of at the point where it was just like, you know what? It's just time to move on. Like I can do everything I'm doing and helping with people with track, but I can do it on another aspect. So I really relate in that realm. And when you talk about DeVos, how was your experience in the DeVos program? I'm in it now. I'm really enjoying it. I'm Dr. Lapchick's GA as he is on this call right now. And what's one of the most valuable lessons you learned like going through the program?
Yeah, whew, that's a loaded question. I think with the DeVos program is just relationships. I really learned the value of relationships starting in the DeVos program. But then also, Taylor, we had talked about this the other day. It depended on the week of what I wanted to do. One week I was like, I'm going to be a softball head coach. And some of my mentors are probably laughing right now because they remember that time. And then the next week I'm a leadership development professional. But I think all in all, what I learned in DeVos is the importance of having a why, the importance of having a purpose, and then also focusing on what you really want, not what your environment is telling you that you should go for, that you should be. So in DeVos and in grad school and certain opportunities, you're constantly having speakers come in and organizations speak to you, and on Fridays you're standing up and you're saying what you want to do upon completion of the degree and things like that. But listen, it's all about really constantly evaluating yourself and thinking about what do I want, not what do I think people want from me, and sitting back and really evaluating that was really important for me to do. Majority of the time in DeVos, I will admit, and in grad school, I probably said what I thought people wanted to hear versus really sitting back and thinking about what Sable wanted, right? What do I want for me? And I would say focusing on the tangible things that you want to do and the impact that you want to make versus the title that you want to have. So now when people ask me, Sable, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? I tell them literally what I want to do. I want to impact people. I want to help people discover and elevate their talents. I want to challenge people to make sure that they can reach their goals. And whatever title that matches up to, great, so be it. But I want to make sure that I am evaluating the impact I want to make versus the title, right? So I learned that in DeVos. And I would just say, again, valuing the relationships with classmates and the importance of networking across, not necessarily networking with all the CEOs, because I'll shout out Brianna Vaughn, who will be on this series later. She is somebody that I can lean on when there's a hard day at work, when as a Black woman and a younger, and we look young, Black woman in the office, I can call her and be like, sis, check this out. I need a lended ear, but also some spiritual advice. But I need you to get me right. that was because we focused on the relationship and we really valued that time during grad school.
Now, you talked about how you had went through, going back and forth between what you wanted to do. So could you talk about a little bit of your journey going from DeVos to now being at Clemson and what you love about that job?
Yeah, so my journey from DeVos to Clemson.
Yeah.
So we go, okay, got it. um, so right out of DeVos, when I graduated, I did not have a job. It was humbling. I had really wanted to earn a job with a post-grad internship with the NCAA, the leadership development team, which is awesome. That was not part of God's plan for me, but that journey and that experience, the last semester of grad school, was really humbling for me, and very, very necessary. So after DeVos, I had that time. God sat me down to really evaluate what I wanted to do and the impact that I wanted to make. And so that time was really necessary. I took an unpaid internship with a leadership development organization called Forward Progress. And about 2 weeks into that, my former head coach at JU called and she said, "Hey, I really value you. I want you to come up to Marshall, be my assistant coach." I had been in DeVos. I had been volunteer coaching at Daytona State College and doing all kinds of camps and things like that. So I'd been in the game. So I looked to my right and I looked to my left. I said, well, let's do it. Never been to Huntington, West Virginia before, but we're going to pack up the car and go. So I took that leap of faith. I was at Marshall for a season. That season was necessary as well. The school is great. My girls, I still talk to them. They are awesome. I love them so much. One of them actually just texted me this morning. And but that summer I had an opportunity again to take a step back and look at my purpose and my why and figure out how I wanted to pursue that why. So during that summer, I moved back home to Orlando, get a call from one of my mentors. I go to Texas Tech and really get my foot in the game with student athlete development. My why and my purpose didn't change, just my pursuit to it did. And I loved it. And my experience at Texas Tech was amazing. I got to do so many different things, have my hand in different projects, have some autonomy over some programs, and that's what I really needed. I had the passion, I had the education, that just all these other things. I just needed experience and to funnel my focus. So my time at Texas Tech was amazing. I still have really close friends there to this day. And towards the end, it was just really time for me to to level up and get some autonomy and to really be able to come to a place like Clemson and, again, continue to learn, continue to make an impact, and just really continue to make an impact in the student athlete development game. So same why, same purpose, just different pursuit to it, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And yes, go Tigers. Whoever put that in the chat.
People, they in the chat going crazy a little bit.
I love it.
But you talked about your journey. So you went through softball in college, you're coaching, and then you're at post-grad internship. You're doing all this stuff. And you briefly talked about what it's like just being Black and looking young. So with our current social climate, being a Black woman and being younger, how are you maintaining your mental health in the midst of all this stuff while supporting athletes? Like, what do you do for that?
Taylor, that is a really good question. And first and foremost, I am a huge advocate for mental health. And I have been since the grad school days, and just myself utilizing therapy and utilizing certain coping and just really self-improvement skills. So I really appreciate this question, and I will be vulnerable and say 2020 was tough. 2020 was tough for a lot of reasons. Coming into a new place, going home literally in isolation within 2.5 months of getting here at Clemson, building relationships during those times. And then, of course, in May and June, we see the heightened emotions and visibility of racial injustice and the things that our country really needed to see, right? Myself, and I will speak for many Black people that I've talked to, not everyone is the same, but it wasn't a surprise to me. None of that was a surprise to me. But what really made it tough to mental health wise was now all of a sudden people who didn't have to think about it every single day. It wasn't in front of minds. Like, we're privileged to not have to think about it, are now texting for support, are now asking questions, are now teammates. Some of those teammates that expressed the microaggressions when I was playing are now saying sorry, right? So it's kind of like, as a Black female, you're bringing back things that you suppressed, that you don't want to think about anymore, because those people are texting you. And then on the other side, so that's the personal side. On the professional side, now it's, hey, I've got to take care of myself and strap in, because my job is to support our student athletes. And so I would say it was challenging, especially over the summer. A shout out to my therapist, because sis was getting it all. Sis was getting it all. I was like, I need you. But I think what's really important is, for me, what I realized is, it's not necessarily about having them lean on you and putting all of their stuff, especially as student athletes of color, the weight on my shoulders. It's what I learned, especially, and shout out to my coworker Anthony Hines, is we were in it together, and we were able to, in a lot of ways, they let us too. So the ability and the opportunity, sorry, this room gets dark on me. The ability and the opportunity to support the student athletes alongside Anthony was a really good opportunity, and actually in turn did help my mental health. So I can hear you. I'm gonna go turn on this light real quick.
Okay. I'll just wait till she comes back.
We're good. It's an automatic light, so we're good. Sorry about that.
Well, I think it's definitely important to talk about mental health. I think the year of 2020 was a lot for everybody, whether they were being directly affected or not. And I think it's important that we continue to talk about it, especially with athletes, because, you know, we're still humans. Like, we're still humans at the end of the day, and then we have to go out there and compete at a high level. And so it's like, if your mental is not there,
Yep.
and you don't even have the people around you supporting you, how are you supposed to compete to the best ability that you can? So I definitely think that that's super important to talk about. And I know, like, Pitt went through their host spiel when everything was going on, and I had a lot to say when I was there. So
Yeah.
I definitely felt like this past year, unfortunately it happened, but I think it needed to happen. And I think it was a wake up call for all of us.
Yeah, and I think again, going back to just being blessed to be able to be in this position. My coworker Anthony Hines, he's a black male. So for us to be in this position, for them to not only see us, but for us to lean on each other and provide a safe space, to figure out and navigate things, just to listen and support, was really important to me. And it made me realize, when I was a student athlete at Jacksonville, I had representation. I'll shout out Lauren Sevis, who's on this call, and Lamar Pottinger. They were academic advisors and SAC advisors as well. So I saw them, was able to have conversations. I could go in the office and give a look like, yeah, we need to talk, sit down, what's up? So that was the first time that I really realized how important it was. But then this summer, thinking back on those times and just bossing up, like, okay, I remember how important it was when, there were a lot of events that happened when I was at Jacksonville, to be able to lean on them, to be able to lean on some other Black members on campus was really important. So I just appreciate the opportunity, and also that God put us in the seat. But then also, Anthony, we were just calling each other like, hey, you good? Like, I just want to make sure you're good first. And there was one weekend where I just had to shut it off. I shut off my phone. My boyfriend and I, we went away for the weekend, obviously COVID safe. But we went away, and I just had to shut it down, and then so that I could be 100% present at work. So, that was challenging, but we navigated. I will say, as an advisor for, our affinity groups and supporting, we do our best. We don't always get it right, but we do our best to make sure that we can support them as best way as we can. So
yes, and that's important, and I'm sure your athletes appreciate it so much, and I definitely appreciate you today. I just want to let everybody know I'm about to ask my last question, so everybody get their questions ready for our Q&A afterwards in the chat. So with that being said, what is some advice that you can give to some of the women in this call right now, being that you're kind of fresh out into your career field. You're about 5 years in. What's just some advice you could give navigating through the industry and just being a woman in this industry?
Yeah, great question. One, I'd say be authentic and be yourself. And I think with authenticity, what I've learned in the past year and a half is how being authentic helps you build those relationships. It helps you connect. It helps you. It's what we do is bigger than who we are. It's we have these jobs, and a lot of times we think, okay, what do I got to do to the next step, and what do I have to do for work, and work becomes our identity. Just like being a student athlete, we talk about identity foreclosure and identity crisis. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to our professional lives and careers. I have learned being authentic has really helped me as a woman coming into it, and being along this journey is just to build those authentic connections. And I see Sherelle in the chat at Miami. She's one of a pure example. Being able to talk to her, a Black woman in a really respected position in my eyes, but being able to be authentic with her and be really real, it is what I would say. The other thing I would say is find your board of directors. Felicia Martin said that to me probably 4 years ago, and that's never left my mind. I think that's really important, is to find your spiritual mentor, to find your career mentor, to find your day-to-day mentor is really important, because we're not perfect, and I definitely am not, and there's a lot of things that I still need to learn, that I want to learn. Just being able to lean on them. And then the last thing I will say is, as a Black woman specifically, we face microaggressions, we face the angry Black woman stereotype, we face we'll call it Black don't crack, we face looking young. When I was at Texas Tech, student athletes thought I was a student athlete, and they would approach me as a student athlete, and I'm like, let's get this straight. You're gonna approach me as a professional, right? But I would say with that, don't let that break us down. Continue to be bold, continue to be confident, continue to work on continue to always be self-evaluating yourself. So for me, I know with DISC, I'm very direct. I'm a very direct person. I have to constantly be evaluating myself and have self-awareness, practice my emotional intelligence, and ask for feedback from trusted people, like just constantly growing, right? We can't let all these stereotypes and things be an excuse to not continue to develop ourselves. Be confident, be authentic, find your mentors, and continue to help yourself grow and be better.
Well, thank you so much. And again, if there's anybody who has questions, please drop them in the chat. The Q&A will start, and it'll be led by Garnett. So thank you so much, Sable, for everything that you said today and your wise words. I really appreciate it.
You're awesome, Taylor. You are awesome. And you're glowing, girl.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sable, first of all, I must say that I'm very proud and honored to be able to host you here today. For those out there that don't know, I have been knowing Sable since kindergarten, actually pre-K. We go way back there. And so I've had the honor and the pleasure to be able to mentor Sable throughout her journey in life. And so that I'm just so proud. I'm filled with a lot of admiration today, Sable. So it's good to have you. We do have a few questions. Our first question comes from our very own Matt Edelson. And he's asking, where did Miss Lee find the inner strength to chart her own path, especially when that may have differed from where others thought she should head to develop her career?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't think it's a great question. It's simple to me. It's not my path. I'm a believer, so it's my Lord and Savior's. So the inner strength comes from my spirituality, from my family. Shout out to my parents, my dad, and my two older brothers. They are my anchor. So I think my inner strength comes from my family, comes from God. But then, like I said before, I didn't plan to make specific stops. I never said, well, after grad school, I'm going to go coach at Marshall, and then I'm going to be in Lubbock, and then I'm going to be at Clemson. I didn't say, I never said those specific things. So for me, It's more so just wherever God's leading me, leaning into Him, leaning into my family, and then of course my friends and support system have just helped me have that inner strength and just trusting in His plan. It's really simple as that. It's easier said than done when you're trying to make certain decisions and things are crazy in your head. But I really attribute it to my Lord and Savior and my family.
Okay, thank you. This question comes from Amber Hudson, a former
Hey,
DeVos
Amber.
student. How you doing out there, Amber? And Amber is asking, what is your advice for students that have to navigate not finding a job right after school? How to refocus or things they can do during their time of navigating?
Amber, I think that's a great question and very fitting for many right now because of COVID, especially. So my advice for students that have to navigate not finding a job right after school would be find the opportunities for you to get just be a fly in the wall, for you to learn, for you to educate yourself in the field, right? It might be volunteering at certain things. It might be asking mentors specific questions instead of saying, "Hey, is there anything that I can do for you?" Go do your research and figure out what are they into, what type of projects do they have. Hey, I see you have this event coming up. Do you mind if I'm a fly on the wall, or I come in and look at what your behind the scenes plan look like? That will help you build relationships in itself. And then when something comes up, a lot of times it's, hey, I know of this person. Let me go ahead and slide this job description over before it's even officially posted. So it's just little things like that. And for anybody who wants to get into athletics, especially advising student athlete development, I have to fact check. Maybe my friend Mark Trumbo can help me on this, but I still believe that M4A membership is free. So there are a bunch of different committees. The Young Professional Subcommittee is great. Our Student Athlete Development Programs and Practices Committee is awesome. All of that is free, and it's something that you can just get in, learn, curriculum. Thank you, Mark. That's free, right? That takes time. There's different subcommittees. There's all kinds of opportunities within M4A to just network, to be a part of the mentor program and things like that. So I would say it just takes a little bit more intentionality and specific questions and doing some research. But you definitely, I really believe that there's ways to overcome this really challenging COVID times.
Well, speaking of Mark Trumbo, he has a question for you. So, Mark, thank you for the question. He is asking, how do you go about finding a champion or advocate and not just a mentor? Is there a difference?
How do you go about finding a champion, advocate, not just a mentor? Is there a difference? There is a difference. I think of it as a sponsor, a champion, someone who advocates for you, and a mentor. The difference between those two would be a mentor helps you be prepared tangibly in the moment, in the grassroots of being able to do and execute things. A sponsor is the one that speaks to you when you're not in the room. So I think what helps you find someone like that is just being consistent in your work. Do the work. You never know who is watching. You're always on interview. You never know who is paying attention to what you're doing. So I would say not necessarily finding an advocate or a champion. I think that comes naturally with you being consistent, with you putting yourself in situations or within opportunities to show how you can execute, to show the value that you can bring. And I think that really comes naturally. I honestly can't sit back and think and say I'm gonna go find a champion and an advocate. It's just come naturally through relationships, through certain circles that I've said yes to and committing to, and then consistently showing up. People see that. People are always watching. There's people that, if I'm ever blessed to have an opportunity to hire, I'm like, I'm gonna keep my eye on this person because they're consistent. Like, there's just people see that, and God sees it too. So I would say just keep being consistent, putting yourself into situations where you can excel and be around people to help you with that.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Sable. This question comes from Taylor Kozak. Taylor is asking, what is the best thing that men can do to help our sisters out?
Ooh, what is the best thing that men can do to help our sisters out? First and foremost, I think it is taking a step back and thinking about what you might not know about a woman's experience and putting in the effort to ask those questions and to be genuinely curious about it instead of thinking you know or assuming that what you know just based off of what you see. Really take an intentional effort to ask questions and specific questions to women. I think the other thing is not only inviting women or women of color a seat at the table, but making sure that their voice is valued, making sure that our voice is not only valued, it's heard. We can contribute to things, but then also taking a step back and letting women and others lead as well, right? I will say my time at Texas Tech, my mentor did an amazing job at this. It was challenging, but just the intentionality of taking the step back to let me lead, but then also to let me fall a little bit so I can learn from mistakes. So then now in my next role, I'm like, whoo, I've been here before. We ain't doing that. But I wouldn't have that opportunity without someone willing to take a step back, to pull the chair back a little bit, to move over, be there to coach a little bit, and then to lead, make some mistakes so that you can continue to not only when you elevate, but then also be able to be successful in your next role. I think thinking about those types of things, it takes an everyday effort. Even myself, being a supervisor now, I have to think like, wait, what's my schedule today? Okay, let me make sure that my graduate assistant can just be a fly on the wall right now. And I think that same type of mindset and intentionality can be if there's a room full of all men, and specifically all men of the same race, having that intentional setback, like, wait, we don't have diversity in here. Let me make sure, like, each meeting I'm rotating or I'm inviting someone, getting their feet wet, taking a step back, allowing them to lead certain things. So it just takes an intentional effort.
All right, so men out there, you heard it straight from Sable. I hope you were taking some notes, so please implement
and Garnett,
that.
I will say too, there are a number of men who are doing this, and so I want to acknowledge that there are a number of men who are a part of Women Leaders in College Sport, who want to learn, who get on the subcommit, who get in the circle calls. So learn from them. Watch to see how the Mark Trumbos, the Rob Knox, the Lamar Pottingers, watch to see how they move, and let them lead as well. So I do think that there's men doing great things for women.
And I applaud all of the men out there to support this Zoomcast, Invisible Women in Sports. So thank you for that, man. This question comes from our very own Larissa Campello. She asks, as a young woman in the sports business world, what would be your long-term goal for your career?
My long-term goal, it comes from a quote. One of my favorite quotes is, "You're not a leader until you've produced another leader who's produced another leader." So my long-term goal would be to take a step back and to see God put so many people in my life for a reason and work through me to impact them so that they can impact other people, so that they can impact other people. The specifics to that, don't have an answer. But what I can say is that I'm starting to see that a little bit of softball players that I've coached, or people that I've worked with, and then also in myself, just a lot of full circle moments. At the end of the day, my long-term goal is to have that ripple effect.
Okay, thank you. This question comes from our very own Rashana Cobb. Hey, Shauna, how you doing out there? And she's asking you, Sable, how have you built a community in rural upstate South Carolina?
Great question. Before I answer that specifically, I will say, working in college athletics, if you take a step back and you look at all the universities and the opportunities that you have, most likely they're not going to be in a major city. A lot of colleges are in rural towns or smaller towns, or not your big time Austin, Texas, Dallas, Texas, all of that. However, I think I will shout out someone that just was in the chat too, Yashika Martin, and she works here. I have a really, really special group of sisters, of Black women here at Clemson. Not only Black women, but just friends within the athletic department. and really making an effort of, like, if there's opportunities to hang out or just simply go walk at the park or to go to a game and to sit together, that's what fills up my cup. I'm good. Atlanta's 2 hours away. Charlotte is 2 hours to the north. Home is 6 hours south. Asheville's an hour and a half. I'm good. I'm a road warrior. But having that inner circle has been really, really, I've been blessed with that, because I do acknowledge that you can't get that everywhere. So that's how I've built a community here. It might look different for other people, but I'm really blessed to have that small circle of trusted friends that I can lean on, have fun, laugh with, and everything. So thanks for that question.
Great response, Sable. Great advice. Last question here from our audience. It comes from Mackenzie Sherman. She says, can you speak more about your statement at the beginning of this conversation regarding your journey of finding out what is your life after sport, as well as what you wish was presented during a loss and transition of identity in sport? If you need me to, I'll repeat it.
Yes. Can you repeat that?
Okay. Can you speak more about your statement at the beginning of this conversation regarding your journey of finding out what is life after sport, as well as what you wish was present during a loss and transition of identity in sport?
What I wish was present. Okay.
That's a good question.
Yes. Retweet, Taylor. I agree. I agree. My journey and what is life after sport. Like I said, my junior year, I was at the peak of my performance. I was the strongest I'd ever been. I was blazing down the first base line. You couldn't tell me nothing, y'all. I'm telling you, I was at the peak of it. I'm finally leadoff hitter. I'm in center field. I'm hype. I'm got my walkout song. I'm walking out to James Brown. I'm feeling great. And right before we got into conference play, it was the end of February. I mean, I'm living it up. I broke my tailbone. I suffered a season-ending injury, so that set me back, and I was down for the count. I was down for the count for a couple weeks. And during that time, the NCAA basketball tournament was in town. There were a couple other sport management opportunities. And so I just had to get myself up and really take advantage of those opportunities. And that helped me figure out, like, hey, I've got to have an identity outside of softball. I can't just be Sable, the softball player, anymore. I can't just, everything that I do, every internship or little job I had, couldn't just be, working a softball camp or doing lessons, which is great, loved it. However, I really had to put myself in time just to explore, right? Hey, it could end up that I'd stayed a softball coach for the rest of my life, great. But at least I could look back and have no what ifs. At least I can look back and say, you know what, I know I don't want to do that because I tried it. I know I don't want to go into business and finance because I tried it, right? So that's what really helped. That's what really opened my eyes to this life after sport, was when I got injured. By my senior year, I was in sport business club. I was doing all kinds of things outside of my sport, still back on the field, thankfully, but that's what woke me up. And then going into the DeVos program helped me find my identity outside of the sport. And I'll say, even when I was coaching at Marshall, I still was transitioning out of this identity of, I'm not the player anymore. It doesn't matter if I can lay down a perfect bunt. Nobody cares. Like, you're there to have a purpose, right? And an impact on the student athlete. So I was still going through that transition. In the last part of the question, I think I just answered a little bit of just that identity piece. Again, realizing I'm more than just a softball player. I'm more than just the X's and O's and my stats. I think our student athletes attribute their stat or performance to their worth, and we still do that as professionals too. Your performance, or how you perceive your performance, it does not equal to your personal worth. So that identity as well, and that mindset shifting into, okay, we've got a podcast over here, we've got things that I'm really excited about, that we're doing at work, but then also really proud of my dad and what he's planning for his life. And I'm proud of my 3 nephews and my mom. She's she's working it, you know, all in front of the camera. Like there's just so many things, other things, part of my identity than just what I do and how I'm perceiving how I'm performing.
Thank you for that answer. Our last question comes from Meredith Benson, and she asked, if an older woman who has amassed great skill sets but wants to pivot to a sports career, how would your support for them be different than a younger professional fresh out of grad school?
I'm reading this question. I want to make sure I get it right. If an older woman has amassed great skill sets but wants to pivot into a sports career, how would your support for them be different than a younger? That's a great question, Meredith. The first thing that comes to mind is helping you get into positions to know how you can meet whomever you're serving. So in our case, meet student athletes where they are. So there's a book called The Remix talking about a multi-generational workplace and how there's a difference between generations. So I think how I would approach it differently would be really allowing that person to experience the difference in generations, but then also bridge things that they have gone through in different careers and different facets of their life to younger generations or whomever they're serving. So I think there's a hand-in-hand relationship there. And I would say how would I support them? I would lean on them for support. wisdom is valuable. I would probably lean on them for support as well, to help me support whomever we're serving, or and you said sports career, so you know, just hopefully that can be transition to other industries within sport. But I think my support would just be to be a bridge of how to meet whomever they're serving or whomever your customer is, or facet that which you're serving, meet them where they're at in case you weren't able to be around for X amount of years.
Thank you so much, Sable. That was our last question. Thank you for everyone for listening today for our first episode of season 2. And we just have some closing remarks for everybody. So be on the lookout for February 11th at 2:00. We're going to have Jessica Brooks. She is the director of championships, events, and internal operations. We thank you for all your support, but continued support is needed. We are a nonprofit organization with other programs that impact various social justice issues. Please use the QR code to support us with a financial gift as we continue to change lives through the power of sport. Big shout out. Thank you again. I am your host, Taylor Middleton. Thank you to Sable Lee again. We really loved having you here. To our producer, Garnett Overby III, our advising consultant, Matt Edelson, and our graduate assistants, Larissa Campello and Olivia Wiggins, and our new blog writer, Kennedy Collins. We thank you all for your support for Invisible Women in Sport. And we appreciate everyone that's been here with us and continue to support us through our journey this year. Again, please follow us on all social media at Institute SSJ. As well, if you missed anything or any of the Zoomcasts, we're also on Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Again, please tune in on February 11th for Jessica Brooks. Also, we need your feedback to Invisible Women in Sports, to make Invisible Sports the best it can be. Follow today's episode. You will receive a short survey. Please complete it and submit it to us so we can make it even better for our next episode. And I'm your host, and thank you for being with us today. Thanks, everybody. See you in 2 weeks.